different platforms, including Linux and Windows.
Okay. And the tabulators themselves, they don't have an operating system in them?
Oh, they do. The tabulator, well, there's various tabulators, but I believe the tabulators that are used in Michigan at the polling location are Linux operating system.
Okay.
I'll have to confirm that, but I'm fairly confident on that.
Okay, and a slight shift of gear here to another question. You're, of course, doing software updates and providing version updates to the state, correct?
So I think, I'm not sure what you're getting at. We are not able to update software like you would a normal computer at your home. Any update that we provide, any change to any line of source code, any piece of hardware has to go through federal certification first. And once it is approved for use, then we can provide the update, and that update is usually done by the election officials themselves.
So, and that's fine. I appreciate that detail. What I'm wondering is...
I'd actually give you an example. So,
okay, thank you.
You have a desktop, you have a server that's air-gapped that sits in your county's central location. Even though Microsoft might want an update, even though antivirus might need an update, there's no updates are done that unless they first go through federal certification.
Oh, even for the virus software and other materials like that?
That's correct.
Okay.
So there's absolutely nothing in our system. The entire environment has to be come from the as certified as such.
But as you're, and where I wanted to go, and this is all valuable information, so I appreciate that. Where I wanted to go with the question, why I'm asking, you're developing and designing software updates, correct? New versions.
Yes.
So prior to you sending those to the EAC for certification, what does Dominion do to check and test the security, the vulnerability of the software before it sends it out for certification?
Okay, I see. So we do our own extensive testing that really mirrors a lot of the testing that is done at the EAC level, except that we do it internally to ourselves. Sometimes that is done directly with our own employees. Sometimes we contract with external labs to do vulnerability testing, for example, or various types of security reviews on our systems.
Those third-party labs that you would contract with, are they certified by the EAC as well? How do you control who's looking at your materials to test it?
The labs that we use are usually accredited and recommended by federal authorities that are well trained in this area. In the case of state certifications, California comes to my mind. They do their own security testing with their own independent authorities that they separately accreditate and certify.
In the EAC's accreditation process, are they interested in security and vulnerability issues, or are they primarily interested in the fidelity of counting votes?
Well, I don't wish to speak for the EAC, but I think it's a very fair guess to say that they're concerned about every aspect of the voting system, including security and accuracy, reliability, and operating environment.
But I mean, you must get reports back from them after you send your materials to them for accreditation. I mean, do they?
Yes, it's publicly available on their website.
With a rubric they use for going through the materials?
I don't understand the question, sir.
Well, I mean, do they have a standard list of benchmarks that they're looking for when they evaluate the software?
Oh, yes, there are. I'm going to probably get it wrong, but it's thousands of pages of guidelines through. It's called the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, The latest and greatest is named the BBSG 2005, and there are literally thousands of lines of pages of requirements.
And so,
and that document absolutely does outline testing guidelines.
and so you send this software off to them for certification, and it doesn't meet some particular benchmark that they want. I assume they provide that feedback to you and say you have to harden this area up or rewrite this area. I mean, so you get that kind of feedback from the EAC?
I'm not sure. I presume we do.
Okay.
I'm not really the certification person, so I'm not sure of the day-to-day interaction when we're in a certification campaign.
Okay.
But I can certainly get that information for you.
Thank you. In your opening remarks, I believe you mentioned the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yes, I did.
As a reference. Is this a separate accrediting agency that you also have to send the software to?
No, it is the EAC in their process of accrediting independent testing authorities has a separate process for doing that, and they rely on NIST for a part of that.
Okay, so by being accredited by the EAC, do you then receive, that you've followed the proper guidelines for the NIST?
I really can't speak to that. We are not an accredited independent testing authority by the EAC, so I'm not an expert on that by any means.
Okay. Was there a significant version update or change leading into the 2020 election? Or are we still operating on the same version from Dominion that we operated under in 2018?
I'm not sure what version off the top of my head that you're operating on in Michigan. I can certainly find that out for you, though.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Lucido has some additional follow-up? Or no, I'm sorry, Senator Tice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience. I know we've got you sitting in the hot seat for a long time, so thank you very much. I appreciate your patience.
Sure.
I want to cover a few of the rumors that I'm getting lambasted with, and I just want to make sure that we've got them out front and you can answer them. So, given the recent disclosures regarding foreign nationals at high levels of everywhere, government and everything, how do you know that you're protecting your source code and that they're not embedded in your organization doing something with your source code?
Well, that's something that the EAC and through its ITAs and the state agencies do. They do a line-by-line review of all of our source code. And so specifically with regards to one of the rumors that certainly I've read and reread is that somehow source code has embedded its way into Dominion systems that somehow originated in Venezuela. That is not the case. Any independent test authority, and there's several of them that have reviewed all our code, could verify this. And in fact, it is my understanding that the Secretary of State's office in California has certified both our software along with competitive software from companies like ES&S and HART and Smartmatic. And so perhaps they're the best ones to answer a question to verify that there's no common source code. But it's something certainly I can attest to for Dominion systems.
Thank you very much. I also have been told that there were at least, there were more than 2 of your direct employees and 1 indirect, that there were as many as 9 in the TCF Center. I don't know that that's necessarily a problem, but that's the information that I have in front of me. I'm not going to give any names in the interest of, all the issues that you described earlier. I certainly would prefer that people remain protected and not threatened. But I would be interested in having that information if there's any mistake, and then what their roles were in the process, right? What were their responsibilities while they were there? I also heard that you received a large sum of money from outside the country just recently, actually just before the election. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I've heard that one too. Unfortunately, it's not true. This one's bizarre and completely unfounded. And I think the claim is something like a Swiss bank through Chinese intermediaries paid the company that owns Dominion. But I can tell you that that's not true under oath.
Okay, thank you for that. And then your equipment, your adjudicators and your tabulators in the TCF, do they have Ethernet access?
No, they're not connected. As I said, they're not connected to the internet. They're designed to be completely standalone system. They are connected locally in a local area network designed to be separate from the internet.
So then they don't have an Ethernet set up in order to be a part of the LAN or Ethernet for any other reason?
Sorry. Yes, they do. So to connect the computers in a local area network, they are connected through, I believe, an RJ45 connector.
Okay.
Through a switch that is not connected to the outside world.
So what processes do you go through just to make sure? I'm assuming that you're very, very careful in making sure that you're maintaining the highest level of safety, because you just were speaking to the hackers convention and all of the things that are going on. We just I think heard about our treasury getting hacked, and we know how often the governmental entities that people are making efforts to do that. I'm assuming that as you're working on your systems, that there is a point where there could be access to it before this information gets pushed out and updated into the different states. What efforts do you take to make sure that this system is as protected as it could possibly be, so that it's not accessible to nefarious people?
Well, there's several things that we do. We are part of a federal program of coordinated vulnerability disclosure. We routinely send our equipment to white hat hackers for vulnerability testing. We obviously rely and follow EAC guidelines very closely. We work collaboratively with our customers who do their own vulnerability testing through their own independent test agencies. To that end. I don't recall us talking about a hacker convention. Maybe that was during the break. But we've even expressed interest at participating in a hacker convention as long as it made sense in terms of some semblance of real life ballot security, as opposed to just ripping apart machines in a way that's obviously would be detected. We actually, if you've heard of the DEF CON conference, that this year I believe it was canceled, but the one that happened in 2019, we had an agreement with Mr. Braun. We actually sent equipment there, and that invitation was revoked, unfortunately, while we were there. But these types of things are not new for us. Our first vulnerability testing happened in New York in 2008. And we've done several since.
So in the event that you were to see a vulnerability or experience a vulnerability, do you have a process in place to respond to it? I'm hesitant to ask you what that process would be, because I think that might weaken it, but...
there's a very well documented process in California where it's required I think it's within 20 days. We strive to report it as soon as we are aware of any vulnerability or report or any problem. From an internal standpoint, we are very collaborative with our customers in discussing our own internal security testing and vulnerability practices.
Thank you very much. I As always happens, I usually end up coming up with 25 questions after we're no longer talking. I would love the opportunity in the future to send a letter or something, or perhaps have you in the future if those come up. Thank you very much for being available to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tice. Senator McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I realize we're short on time, so I'll be brief. I just got a couple questions. With regard to TCF, we have sworn testimony that the machines had physical and wireless networks active. We also understand that according to your testimony moments ago, the equipment may not have had the latest software antivirus patches in place. In light of this, would you consider it to be impossible for an on-premise or local network adversary to gain access to one or more machines or computers, especially if they were well-versed in the source code? Would it be impossible for anything to be manipulated?
So first, let me start off by saying, if there has been any testimony that has been found to be credible by a judge or by an election official, I'm not aware of it. I've testified today that our systems are designed to be in a closed area network, and that we do not have wireless capability on our systems. So does that answer your question?
Somewhat. Is it impossible to breach it? Yes or no?
I certainly think so.
Okay.
But then again, even if it was possible, it'd certainly be detectable. And at the end of the day, I keep coming back to the paper ballots because there's a good reason for it. Even if ballots, if anything like what you're suggesting is possible, and I certainly don't think it is, and if there's sworn testimony that something happened, I'm not aware of it if it's been found to be independently credible. But the paper ballots would not match the result of the county canvass process. And that's, so in terms of the accuracy of the tabulation, as long as you're able to complete and certify a canvass process, you would be, you would know that your ballots were accurately counted because you've got the ballots still in your possession.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question, sir. Can you provide the checksums of the voting software when it was certified, and can they be compared with what is currently on the voting machines?
So absolutely, you shouldn't get that from us. You should get that from certification agencies and the independent test labs, and that is a part of regular post-election reviews.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Mr. Polis, how are the employees, not so much for, well, even at Dominion, how do you go about checking them, make sure that they don't have foreign connections? I think that was a question that Senator Tice kind of started on, but then went in a different direction. So what is your process for assuring that that there isn't some sort of illicit influence or going on with the programming?
We do very extensive background checks on our employees through third parties. This is part of our voluntary disclosure that we have with our state partners. As it pertains to our contract employees, we employ third-party temp firms, and part of their obligations and accountability is to do background checks, criminal checks, and the like.
And what about the background then of those who use as third-party vendors for hardware, technical know-how? Are you checking those sources as well?
Well, for that type of work, we work with EAC recommended ITAs.
And they maintain security checks, background checks on those that they're making recommendations for?
Yes, they do.
Completely different, complete switch here then in line of questioning. The digital images of the ballots, is this something that's only taken of absentee ballots, or are there digital images taken of the ballots that are done in in-person polling places as well?
Digital images can be recorded on all of our paper scanners.
And are those, is that done? I mean, is every ballot made an image of?
It's a county by county decision. So in the case of Antrim County, I can tell you that they were not recorded, which is how we know for certain, above all of the other checks, that digital adjudication could not have been used there.
And so for those who do take digital images of the ballots, what are those files as far as security goes? How can we be sure they don't become modified later?
Well, they are digitally encrypted and signed and securely stored in 2 different places. And ultimately, they would have to match the paper ballots.
Okay. Do any other members have any additional follow-ups at this time? Well, Mr. Polis, again, we want to thank you for making yourself available to us, and I hope that you will avail yourself if we ask you to come back. I would certainly try to assure you it would be a shorter time period if we did have to have you come back and do some additional follow-up, and I would likely want to, kind of gather the questions that we might have, such as Senator Tice mentioned, get them written down, send them to you, and then ask you to come in and do a brief follow-up with us to answer any questions that we either don't really have fully developed in our minds right now or might come to us here in the next day or two. I hope that would be acceptable to you.
Chair McBroom, I appreciate the opportunity for having me and giving me an opportunity to correct a lot of the record of what's been said.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Brower as well, thank you for your attention today too.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and to the committee. And if the chair or the committee does have follow-up questions, we'd be happy to consider anything in writing you might want to submit. We'll look forward to getting that from you. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Members, I will see you across the street at Bogie Tower when the Senate Oversight Committee next convenes, which will be shortly. So, Paul, is that still correct? We're coordinating with the House, but yes. So please head there somewhat directly. Yes. So Vice Chair Lucido moves that the Senate Oversight Committee adjourn. Hearing no objections, we're adjourned.